The new CEO fired me without realizing. I was the only person holding together our company's biggest international accounts. 3 days later, everything started collapsing. The meeting invite came at 8:12 on a Thursday morning. No subject line. No explanation. Just, conference room C 8:30 a.m. Mandatory. I stared at the notification for a few seconds, while the coffee machine hummed behind me in the break room. Around me, people pretended not to notice. That was the first sign something was wrong. In offices like ours, news traveled before words did. People suddenly stopped making eye contact. Conversations died when you walked into a room. Slack replies became unusually formal. I already knew. My name is Elena Mercer, 39 years old, Director of International Energy Partnerships at Norvale Industrial Systems. Fancy title. What it actually meant was this. I spent 11 years building relationships across the Gulf region. While executives in expensive suits took credit for contracts they couldn't even explain on a map. I spoke fluent Arabic. I understood the culture. I knew which clients preferred direct negotiation and which ones considered aggressive bargaining insulting. I remembered birthdays, religious holidays, family names, and the tiny details that turn business into trust. Most importantly, our largest clients trusted me. Not Norvale. Me. I walked into conference room C exactly on time. Rachel Whitmore was already there. Nivio. 42. Blonde, sharp jawline, perfect posture, and the kind of smile people practice in mirrors before investor meetings. She'd been hired 6 weeks earlier after the board decided the company needed modern leadership. Since arriving, she'd fired 12 senior employees. Every single one of them over 40. Sitting beside her was Melissa from HR, clutching a tablet like it was emotional support equipment. Neither of them offered coffee. That's another sign. Elena, Rachel said smoothly, crossing one leg over the other. Thank you for coming. I sat down slowly. Melissa avoided my eyes. Rachel folded her hands on the table. As you know, Norvale is entering a transformational phase focused on agility, innovation, and organizational optimization. There it was. Corporate language for asterisk, we're about to ruin your life while pretending it's strategic. Asterisk. I stayed silent. She continued. After evaluating departmental structures, we've decided to eliminate several legacy-facing roles. Legacy-facing. I almost laughed. I managed clients responsible for nearly 30% of the company's international revenue, but apparently I sounded like outdated software now. Rachel glanced briefly at her notes. We believe the company needs younger, faster energy moving forward. Younger. There it was. Not even hidden. Melissa slid a digital severance agreement toward me. 3 months pay. Benefits extension. Indeed. Standard corporate funeral package. I skimmed the document once. They'd spelled my client region incorrectly. Middle East operations was listed as Mediterranean relations. That told me everything I needed to know. Rachel leaned forward slightly. I know this may feel sudden. It doesn't, I interrupted calmly. She stopped talking. I looked directly at her. You made this decision the day you arrived. A flicker crossed her face. Tiny, but visible. Executives hate when you say the quiet part out loud. Melissa shifted uncomfortably. Rachel recovered quickly. We simply believe the company can streamline communication through centralized account management. I nodded slowly. Who's taking over the Gulf accounts? We've assembled a transition team. That wasn't an answer, which meant they had no idea. I almost warned them. Almost. But then I remembered sitting through 3 executive meetings while Rachel repeatedly referred to Saudi clients as high-maintenance accounts. I remembered her interrupting me during a regional strategy briefing to explain Middle Eastern business etiquette to me, after reading one airport business book. I remembered her saying, asterisk relationships shouldn't depend on one employee. Asterisk. That one actually made me smile inside, because she was about to learn exactly why they sometimes do. I stood up and closed the severance folder. Rachel looked surprised. You're not going to review it? I already did. You may want legal counsel. The terms are fine. Melissa looked genuinely confused. People expect emotion in these moments. Anger. Crying. Begging. Dignity unsettles them. I picked up my bag. Then I paused near the door. The Al-Sabah delegation lands Monday morning, I said quietly. Rachel frowned slightly. I'm sorry. The Kuwait renewal meeting. Blank stare. She didn't know. Jesus Christ. The board had spent 14 months chasing that contract extension. $9.2 million annually. And the CEO who fired the account director didn't even know the clients were arriving in 4 days. I looked at Melissa. Poor woman suddenly looked terrified. Rachel straightened in her chair. We're fully prepared for all upcoming negotiations. No, I said calmly. You really aren't. Then I walked out. The strangest part about getting fired wasn't the anger. It was the silence afterward. I packed my office in 23 minutes. Nobody stopped me. Nobody knew what to say. One junior analyst looked like she wanted to hug me, but got scared when Rachel walked past the hallway. By noon my email access was gone. By 1 o'clock, my employee profile disappeared from the company directory. By 3 my phone started vibrating nonstop. Not recruiters. Clients. I ignored the first 6 calls. Then Khalid called. Chairman of Al-Sabah Energy Solutions. One of the most influential energy executives in Kuwait. I answered immediately. Elena, he said warmly. My assistant tells me your company removed you. Straight to the point. Word traveled fast over there. Yes. Silence. Then, why? I walked toward my apartment window and watched rain slide down the glass. Officially? Restructuring. Khalid made a quiet sound in the back of his throat. Disapproval. In Gulf business culture, that tiny sound carries more weight than yelling. I see, he said slowly. Another silence. Then his voice softened slightly. Will you still attend Monday? No. And who will replace you? That, I admitted honestly, I don't know. A very long pause followed. Finally he sighed. This is unfortunate. What he actually meant was, your company just made a catastrophic mistake. We spoke for another few minutes about neutral topics. Family. Travel. His youngest daughter getting accepted into university in London. Then before hanging up he said something that stayed with me. Elena, business survives on trust. Not presentations. After the call ended, I sat quietly in my kitchen for nearly an hour. Not crying. Not panicking. Just thinking. Because deep down, I already knew what Monday was going to look like. And I knew Rachel Whitmore had absolutely no idea what was coming for her. Monday morning started with 3 missed calls from former coworkers before I'd even finished making coffee. The 4th call was from Omar. I answered immediately. Omar. Elena, he said, already laughing. Oh my God. That was enough. Everything had exploded. Omar worked in Norvale's IT department. Cybersecurity officially. Corporate survival observer unofficially. 32. Chronically sleep deprived. Survived almost entirely on espresso and sarcasm. We'd become friends years earlier after bonding over mutual hatred of executive buzzwords. What happened? I asked calmly. He inhaled sharply like someone trying not to laugh during a funeral. Okay, so, the delegation arrived at 9 exactly. 3 black SUVs. Full executive treatment downstairs. Catering. Custom nameplates. Rachel even had fresh orchids brought into the conference room. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. She thought this was an investor presentation, Omar continued. Not relationship management. And Khalid. Oh, he looked furious before anyone even spoke. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What happened next? He walks into the conference room, looks around once and asks where you are. Straight to it. No small talk. No fake politeness. Just the question that mattered. I could practically picture it. Rachel probably smiling confidently right up until that moment. What did she say? Omar burst out laughing again. She did the corporate voice. I rubbed my forehead. Of course she did. He lowered his tone dramatically. Elena is no longer with Norvale, but we have a highly capable transition team prepared to continue supporting your organization moving forward. Corporate language always sounds ridiculous when repeated by normal people. And then? I asked quietly. Silence. Then Omar answered. Khalid didn't sit down. I felt a small chill run through me. In fact, Omar continued, none of them sat down. Rachel starts introducing the new account managers and Khalid just raises his hand slightly like he's stopping traffic. I could see that too. Controlled. Polite. Dangerous. And then he says, we specified in writing that Ms. Mercer was essential to this partnership. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. The email. 8 months earlier, Khalid's legal team had formally requested continuity protection in all future negotiations. I personally forwarded the documentation to executive leadership. Apparently nobody read it. What did Rachel do? She tried to recover. How? Badly. That made me smile for the first time all weekend. Omar continued. She starts talking about organizational restructuring and collaborative transition planning. Jesus. No, wait. Gets worse. I walked toward the living room window. Rain again. Gray skies over the city. Perfect atmosphere for corporate collapse. Khalid looked directly at her, Omar said, and asked one question. I waited. Did you dismiss Ms. Mercer before or after receiving our contractual requirements? I actually laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because it was over. Rachel just didn't know it yet. What did she say? She tried dodging the question. Then one of their legal advisors pulled out a printed copy of the email. Oh no. Oh yes, Omar said immediately, hearing it in my voice. Physical copy. Highlighted. I leaned against the glass. And then, Khalid thanked Rachel for her time. That's when everyone stood up. Just like that. Years of contracts. Millions in revenue. Gone in under 10 minutes. Did anyone try stopping them? The VP of sales literally followed them into the lobby. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. What did he say? He kept repeating that Norvale valued the partnership. And Khalid. Omar paused dramatically. He said, relationships are not built by replacing people like office furniture. Damn. That line would spread through the industry by sunset. What happened after they left? Oh, absolute panic. I heard typing in the background while Omar spoke, probably monitoring 10 disasters simultaneously. Rachel locked herself in her office for almost an hour. Then every executive suddenly started asking questions nobody bothered asking before firing you. Such as, what exactly Elena does here? I laughed again. A bitter one this time, because that was the problem. Nobody in executive leadership had ever really understood my job. They saw contracts closing, revenue increasing, clients staying loyal. But they thought relationships maintained themselves automatically, like software updates. What are they doing now? I asked. Damage control. HR is reviewing your files. Legal is reviewing old contracts. Sales is pretending they understood your regional reports all along. And Rachel? Oh, she's still trying to act in control. How long will that last? Omar snorted. Depends how fast the board finds out she just detonated $9 million. That happened faster than expected. Tuesday morning another call came in. This time from Layla Hassan, Regional Procurement Director for one of our Saudi partners. One of the smartest negotiators I'd ever met. Elena, she said immediately, tell me the rumors are exaggerated. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table. They probably aren't. Quiet sigh. Then, your CEO dismissed you without transition planning? Yes. And without informing regional partners first? Yes. Layla went silent for several seconds. That was worse than yelling. In Gulf business culture, silence often means disappointment serious enough that words become unnecessary. Finally, she spoke again. This creates concerns. There it was. The diplomatic version of, * we no longer trust your company. * I understand. No, she corrected gently. I don't think your executives do. Fair point. She lowered her voice slightly. Elena, relationships here are personal. Your company treated them as administrative. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. Because she was right. Western corporations love talking about international markets, global expansion, cross-cultural partnerships. But internally, they still treated relationship management like a replaceable support role, instead of the foundation holding entire revenue streams together. By Wednesday, the fallout started spreading publicly. An industry newsletter published a short article about instability within Norvale's Gulf operations. No names mentioned, but everyone knew. The energy sector was smaller than people thought, especially internationally. By Thursday afternoon, 2 additional clients postponed renewal discussions indefinitely. One requested clarification regarding leadership continuity. Corporate language for *, why should we trust people dumb enough to fire their own infrastructure? *. That evening Omar called again. You sitting down? I'm already afraid. You should be. I heard him shuffling papers dramatically. The board requested an emergency review. That was fast. Rachel must be thrilled. Oh, she's dying. I almost felt sympathy. Almost. What triggered it? Finance. That surprised me. Finance. Apparently someone finally calculated how much revenue is attached to your accounts. I stared blankly ahead. Unbelievable. Nobody had bothered doing that before firing me. How bad? Worse than they thought. How much? Your accounts represented 28% of projected international growth for next fiscal year. I closed my eyes slowly. 28%. And they eliminated me to reduce salary overhead. Corporate genius. Omar lowered his voice. Elena, between us? Yeah. They're terrified. That part didn't surprise me, because corporations can survive lawsuits, bad press, executive scandals. But once trust disappears internationally, especially in relationship-based business cultures, the damage spreads quietly. Then all at once. Thursday night, I finally opened LinkedIn for the first time since being fired. Over 80 unread messages. Recruiters, former clients, competitors, consulting firms. One message stood out immediately. It was from Amir Rahman, CEO of a Bahrain-based energy logistics company I'd worked with years earlier. Simple message. 3 sentences. Asterisk, I heard what happened. Asterisk. Asterisk, their loss. Asterisk. Asterisk, call me when you're ready. Asterisk. I stared at it for a long time. Then my phone buzzed again. Omar. I answered immediately. You're never going to believe this. What now? They hired a consulting firm. I blinked. For what? Cross-cultural business recovery. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. You're joking. I swear to God. Oh my God. And wait, it gets better. The consultants asked if Norvale still had internal regional expertise. I already knew where this was going. What did Rachel say? She said they were transitioning knowledge resources. I covered my face with one hand. And then, the consultant asked who the replacement specialist was. Silence. Beautiful silence. Finally Omar said, Elena. Nobody answered. 2 weeks after getting fired, I stopped feeling angry. That surprised me. I expected rage, bitterness, obsessively replaying the meeting in my head at 3 a.m. Instead, I mostly felt detached, like I was watching someone else's disaster unfold from very far away. The funny part? My life had actually become calmer. No midnight emergency calls from executives who ignored my advice all quarter then suddenly panicked during negotiations. No 12-hour flights just to fix mistakes made by people who thought international business worked the same way as domestic sales. No Rachel. That alone lowered my blood pressure dramatically. Friday afternoon, I met Omar for coffee downtown. He arrived wearing a wrinkled black hoodie and carrying enough electronics in his backpack to disable a small government. You look healthier, he said immediately. You look legally questionable. Thank you. We sat near the window while rain hammered against the street outside. Helsinki in late autumn looked like a city permanently recovering from emotional damage. Omar slid his phone across the table. Read this. It was an internal Norvale email. Forwarded secretly, obviously. Subject line. Urgent Gulf region account stabilization. I skimmed the message once and immediately started laughing. What? Omar grinned. They're using my terminology. Yep. Entire sections of the strategy document were clearly copied from reports I'd written over the years. Relationship continuity protocols. Regional trust maintenance. Cultural escalation sensitivity. The problem? None of the executives actually understood what the phrases meant. They were repeating language like children using scientific vocabulary they memorized phonetically. "This gets better," Omar said. "Oh no." "Oh yes." He took a sip of coffee. "Rachel hired an external advisor." "The consulting firm?" "Different one." I blinked. "There are two now?" "There are three." I stared at him. "Three separate consulting firms?" Apparently the board believes the first two lacked regional specialization. I leaned back in my chair. Corporate panic had officially entered its final form. "How much is this costing them?" Omar smiled slowly. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "Last estimate from finance?" "Around 400,000 already." I nearly choked on my coffee. "For consultants?" "And emergency legal review." I laughed harder. Because 6 weeks earlier Rachel decided my salary was too expensive. Now they were burning hundreds of thousands trying to replace institutional knowledge they'd thrown away for free. How's the board handling it? They're furious. That part didn't surprise me anymore. What about Rachel? Omar hesitated. That got my attention. What? She's losing support. I stayed quiet. He lowered his voice slightly. Apparently one of the board members asked why nobody consulted regional leadership before terminating you. Reasonable question. Rachel said she believed operational knowledge was transferable. I smiled coldly. There it was again. The fundamental misunderstanding. Knowledge transfers. Trust doesn't. One can be documented. The other has to be earned slowly over years. Omar leaned closer. Elena, between us? Always dangerous when you start sentences like that. They're trying to figure out how much of the client loyalty was actually tied to you personally. I stared at him, then laughed softly. Oh, they're about to hate the answer. Because by then the market reaction had become impossible to ignore. One Kuwaiti partner paused negotiations entirely. A Saudi infrastructure client reduced projected expansion plans. And the Bahrain account, the one I'd spent almost 3 years developing, requested reassignment away from Norvale leadership oversight. That last one was brutal. Clients almost never phrase things that directly. How bad is it internally? I asked. Omar actually looked impressed. You know the scene in movies where the submarine starts leaking, and everyone's trying to seal compartments before total implosion? Yeah. That. He pulled out his phone again. Also, Rachel tried contacting Khalid directly. I winced immediately. Oh no. Oh yes. How did that go? According to legal? He checked his screen dramatically. Mr. Al-Sabah appreciates Norvale's outreach, but does not currently believe conditions exist for productive strategic dialogue. I burst out laughing. That's diplomatic murder. Exactly. In international business, polite wording is often the sharpest knife. Especially in Gulf culture. Nobody screams. Nobody insults you directly. They simply remove respect from the conversation. And once that happens, you're finished. That night I finally called Amir back. The Bahrain CEO. We spoke for almost 2 hours. Not just about work. About the industry. Regional expansion. How badly Western firms misunderstood relationship-based markets. At one point he laughed quietly and said, You know why Gulf clients trust you? Because I speak Arabic? No. Then why? Because you listen before talking. That stayed with me. Because Rachel never listened. Most executives didn't. They arrived assuming intelligence automatically translated across cultures. Doesn't. Especially not internationally. By the 3rd week after my firing, recruiters were contacting me daily. London. Dubai. Doha. Singapore. One American competitor offered me a ridiculous salary package over Zoom after 30 minutes of conversation. I turned them down. Not because the offer was bad. Because during the interview, their VP repeatedly referred to the Middle East as basically one business culture. Absolutely not. That sentence alone told me everything. Meanwhile, Norvale kept deteriorating publicly. An article appeared in Energy Global Review discussing leadership instability affecting strategic Gulf partnerships. Still no names. Still obvious. Then came the real damage. Industry gossip. That's what kills companies internationally. Private conversations. Recommendations disappearing quietly. Introductions no longer happening. One evening Layla called me again. This time she sounded tired. Elena, I need to ask honestly. Okay. Did Norvale truly believe your role was replaceable? I looked out across the dark city skyline. Yes. A long silence followed. Then she laughed softly. Not mocking. Just genuinely stunned. Incredible. What? In our region, removing the relationship anchor before contract renewal would be considered reckless. Apparently in America it's called optimization. That made her laugh harder. Then her voice softened. You deserved better. Simple sentence. Hit harder than expected. Because for weeks I'd been so focused on the absurdity of the situation that I hadn't fully processed the humiliation. 11 years. 11 years building international trust networks. And one executive who'd known me less than 2 months reduced all of it to payroll calculations. That night I opened a bottle of wine and sat alone in my apartment thinking about the last decade of my life. The flights. The negotiations. The hotel rooms. Learning Arabic one brutal mistake at a time. Earning trust slowly. Carefully. Honestly. And suddenly something became very clear to me. Norvale didn't actually value what I did. They valued the results after the work was already invisible. That realization changed everything. The next morning my phone rang at 7:14 a.m. Unknown number. I answered carefully. Elena Mercer. Ms. Mercer, this is Daniel Reeves from Norvale Legal Counsel. I closed my eyes slowly. There it was. Finally. How can I help you? We were hoping to discuss a potential consulting arrangement. I almost laughed. Not because it was unexpected. Because of how predictable it was. Companies always think they can buy back stability after destroying loyalty. And why, I asked calmly, would I be interested in that? Silence. Then, we believe your expertise remains highly valuable to ongoing regional partnerships. Translation. Asterisk we are on fire. Asterisk. I walked slowly toward my kitchen window, while Daniel continued speaking in careful legal language. Flexible contract terms. Independent structure. Immediate compensation review. Executive coordination authority. Interesting. Very interesting. Because suddenly they weren't talking to me like replaceable infrastructure anymore. Now they were negotiating like people trying to stop bleeding. What exactly happened internally? I asked. Daniel hesitated too long. That told me enough already. Finally he answered carefully. The board has concerns regarding recent operational decisions. Operational decisions? Meaning Rachel. How serious? Another pause. Then, serious enough that we are exploring immediate stabilization measures. I smiled faintly. There it was. The beginning of the end. After the call ended, I sat quietly at my kitchen table for several minutes. Then my phone buzzed again. Omar. One message. Asterisk please tell me you just got the call. Asterisk. I replied instantly. Asterisk I did. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then. Asterisk Elena. Charge them criminal amounts of money. Asterisk. 3 days later, I walked back into Norvale headquarters. Not as an employee. As a consultant. The difference mattered more than anyone there realized. The lobby looked exactly the same. Same marble floors. Same artificial plants. Same giant digital screen displaying corporate slogans nobody actually believed. But this time I wore a visitor badge instead of an employee ID. And somehow that felt powerful. The receptionist looked up when I approached. Recognition flashed across her face instantly. Then confusion. Then something dangerously close to satisfaction. Welcome back, she said carefully. Interesting choice of words. Not asterisk good morning. Asterisk. Not asterisk how can I help you? Asterisk. Welcome back. Word had definitely spread through the building. I smiled politely. Thanks. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt surreal. A month earlier security had escorted me out quietly while executives avoided eye contact. Now legal counsel personally invited me back under emergency contract authorization, approved directly by the board. Funny how quickly corporate hierarchy changes when revenue starts evaporating. Daniel Reeves met me outside the conference room. Tall. Nervous. Expensive suit. Corporate attorney energy in human form. Miss Mercer, he said carefully, extending a hand. Elena is fine. He looked relieved. That meant everyone inside was terrified I'd walk in angry. Honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. That phase had passed. Now I was simply expensive. Daniel opened the conference room door. And there she was. Rachel Whitmore. Still CEO. Technically. But she looked different. More tired. Less polished. Like someone sleeping 4 hours a night while pretending everything remained under control. Around the table sat 3 board members, Daniel, 2 finance executives, and Rachel herself. The atmosphere felt less like a business meeting and more like a hostage negotiation. Thank you for coming, one board member said immediately. Older man. Silver hair. Oil industry veteran. I recognized him from shareholder events. Thomas Bennett. He looked directly exhausted. I sat down calmly. You said the situation was urgent. Rachel shifted slightly in her chair. Tiny movement. Still noticeable. Thomas folded his hands. We'll be direct. Since your departure, Norvale has experienced significant instability across Gulf operations. Corporate understatement of the century. How significant? I asked. Finance answered that one. Current projected losses exceed 11 million. There it was. An actual number. Not rumors. Not speculation. $11 million. Gone. And judging by the expressions around the table, everyone knew it could still get worse. I leaned back slightly. That's unfortunate. Nobody smiled. Rachel finally spoke. We believe many of these relationships can still be stabilized. Interesting. Not repaired. Stabilized. Even she understood trust was already damaged permanently. I looked at her for the first time since entering the room. And what exactly do you believe my role would be? Rachel opened her mouth. Thomas interrupted before she could answer. We want you operating independently. Smart man. He already knew involving Rachel directly would destroy negotiations before they started. Daniel slid a folder across the table. Inside was the proposed consulting contract. I read it slowly. 6-month term. Triple my previous compensation. Full autonomy over Gulf accounts. Direct board-level communication authority. No executive interference. I almost laughed. 30 days earlier Rachel considered me outdated infrastructure. Now the board was rebuilding the company around my access. What happens operationally? I asked. Thomas answered carefully. You would oversee all regional relationship recovery. And Rachel? Silence. Beautiful silence. Finally Thomas spoke again. The executive team will remain informed where appropriate. Translation. Asterisk Rachel is no longer trusted near these negotiations. Asterisk. I closed the folder slowly, then looked at Daniel. There's a problem. Every person at the table visibly tensed. I tapped one paragraph with my finger. Knowledge transfer requirements. Rachel immediately straightened slightly. Of course that clause mattered to her. They still wanted replacement access. Backup infrastructure. Someone cheaper eventually. I looked directly at Thomas. No. Silence again. I continued calmly. You're not purchasing 11 years of regional trust for 6 months of consulting fees. Rachel spoke carefully. We simply need continuity safeguards. No, I corrected quietly. You need me. That landed hard. Because it was true. Nobody argued. I picked up a pen, crossed out the entire paragraph, then added one sentence underneath. Consultant retains exclusive ownership of all relationship management methodologies and regional strategic frameworks. Daniel read it once, then nodded immediately. Smart attorney. He understood leverage when he saw it. Rachel clearly hated every second of this. Good. Not because I wanted revenge. Because maybe discomfort was finally teaching her something. I closed the folder. My revised rate is 15% higher than your original offer. One finance executive nearly inhaled his own soul. Thomas didn't even blink. Accepted. Immediately. That told me everything. The company was desperate. I stood up. I'll have my attorney finalize revisions by tomorrow. Rachel finally spoke again. Elena. First time she'd used my first name. Interesting. I looked at her calmly. She hesitated. probably searching for language that could still preserve authority. Finally, I hope we can move forward professionally. There it was. The executive version of please stop destroying my career. I held her gaze for a few seconds, then answered honestly, I already have, and walked out. Omar called me 30 minutes later. How much? Apparently my unemployment phase is over. Elena. Triple. Dead silence. Then screaming. Actual screaming. I told you to rob them. I laughed all the way home. The next 4 months became the strangest period of my professional life, because technically I worked with Norvale, but emotionally, I no longer belonged to them. I traveled to Kuwait twice, Bahrain once, Dubai 3 times, and every meeting started the same way. Not with contracts, not with pricing, with reassurance. Clients wanted to know one thing. Was I truly back in control? Not Norvale. Me. That distinction mattered. The first dinner with Khalid after my return happened at his home outside Kuwait City. Private setting. Family meal. That alone told me the relationship wasn't dead yet. At one point he poured more coffee into my cup and asked quietly, Why did you go back? Good question. I thought about it honestly before answering. Because I didn't want 11 years of trust destroyed by 6 weeks of executive arrogance. Khalid smiled slightly, then nodded once. After that conversation, negotiations restarted. Slowly, carefully. Trust damaged itself quickly. Rebuilding it took patience. By the 3rd month, 2 major accounts had stabilized completely. 1 partially recovered. The 4th was gone permanently. Competitors moved fast once weakness became visible. That's how international business works. Nobody waits politely while you recover from incompetence. Inside Norvale, the atmosphere apparently became unbearable. Omar updated me constantly. Rachel just got bypassed in her own executive meeting. Legal now reports directly to the board. Finance installed external oversight. Each update sounded less like leadership and more like supervised probation. Then one Friday evening Omar called sounding almost emotional. It finally happened. What happened? She resigned. I sat quietly for a second. How? Official statement says she's pursuing new strategic opportunities. Of course it did. Corporate language again. Always so polished. So the board forced her out. Basically. I walked slowly toward my apartment balcony overlooking the harbor. Cold wind. Dark water. City lights reflecting across the surface. How bad was it internally? I asked. Omar laughed softly. Elena. People applauded after the announcement. Damn. That's when you know leadership failed completely. Not fear. Not silence. Relief. A few weeks later my consulting contract officially ended. By then I already knew I wasn't staying. Not because Norvale offered bad terms afterward. Actually, they offered excellent ones. Promotion. Executive authority. Massive compensation increase. Too late. The trust was gone. And honestly, so was my loyalty. Instead, I accepted Amir's offer in Bahrain. Regional Director of International Strategy. Better salary. Better culture. Actual respect for relationship-based business. When I told Khalid, he smiled immediately. Good, he said. That's it? Elena, strong bridges should be valued before they collapse. Fair enough. The funny part? Within 6 months of my move, 2 former Norvale clients transferred their business to Amir's company. Not because we underbid competitors. Because trust followed people. Not logos. Not corporate branding. People. My farewell dinner happened at a small restaurant near the harbor. Nothing fancy. Just close friends. Omar came straight from work still carrying his ridiculous backpack full of electronics. He raised a glass dramatically halfway through dinner. To Elena Mercer. He announced loudly enough for half the restaurant to look over. The only person in corporate history to get fired, bankrupt an executive career, save the company anyway, and then leave richer. Everyone laughed. Including me. Then Omar pointed at me seriously. You know what the best part is? What? You never even yelled. I thought about that for a moment. He was right. I never screamed. Never threatened anyone. Never sabotaged the company. I simply let consequences arrive naturally. And honestly, that was far more powerful. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood alone outside the restaurant watching snow drift slowly across the streetlights. My phone buzzed once. Message from Khaled. Simple. Short. Asterisk safe travels, Sister Elena. Asterisk. I smiled. Because in the end, that was the part Rachel never understood. International business isn't built through presentations, or optimization strategies, or executive buzzwords. It's built slowly, conversation by conversation, promise by promise, until eventually people stop trusting the company and start trusting you.